At 9 a.m. on April 18, 1990, a middle-aged woman named Hisako Iguchi hurriedly walked into the Tokyo Police Department, Japan, with a worried look on her face. She urgently reported that her daughter, who had gone on an overseas trip, was now unreachable. With a trembling voice, she begged the police to quickly help find her daughter. According to Ms. Hisako, the missing person was Mariko Iguchi, a senior college student. Mariko had recently traveled to Taiwan and was scheduled to return to Japan on April 18th. Ms. Hisako had gone to the airport to meet her daughter that day, but waited for hours without seeing her. After checking, she learned that the flight had landed on time, with no delays. This realization made the mother's heart sink, fearing something terrible had happened to her daughter. The police immediately began investigating after receiving the report. They found that Mariko had neither canceled nor changed her pre-booked flight, but she hadn't boarded the plane that day, and there was no record of her entering Japan. In other words, Mariko never returned home. Ms. Hisako continued to tell the police that she had lost contact with her daughter on April 7th. Mariko was a sensible child who had never traveled far alone before, so before departing, the mother and daughter had agreed that Mariko would send a postcard home every day to report her safety once she arrived in Taiwan. The last postcard Ms. Hisako received was on April 7th, after which she received no more. Initially, Ms. Hisako thought her daughter might have been having too much fun to write, until Mariko didn't board her scheduled flight back to Japan, making her realize something had gone wrong. The police examined the postcards Mariko had written to her mother, 5 in total. Through their content, they learned that on April 3rd she had toured Taipei. On April 4th, she took a train south to Tainan City and spent 2 days sightseeing there. The last postcard, dated April 7th, mentioned her continuing south to Kaohsiung City. This was the final information the family received from her. After that, Mariko completely lost contact. Mariko Iguchi was 23 years old, born in Tokyo. Her parents had divorced when she was very young, and she had always lived with her mother. Her mother, Ms. Hisako, was an insurance salesperson. Despite facing a busy and tiring job, Ms. Hisako always showered her daughter with love. In return, Mariko was always an obedient and understanding girl. She studied diligently, consistently achieving excellent results, becoming a great source of pride and comfort for her mother. Entering the prestigious Ochanomizu Women's University in Tokyo, Mariko quickly made an impression on those around her. Her cute appearance and lively, friendly personality helped her easily win the affection of friends and teachers. 4 years of college passed in the blink of an eye, bringing Mariko to the threshold of a new life. While her classmates were busy choosing graduation thesis topics, Mariko had long had her own plans. After many discussions with her mother, she decided to take a graduation trip to Taiwan. Her purpose was not just sightseeing, but also to experience the local customs firsthand, from which she would write a unique and insightful thesis. With excitement and full of hope, Mariko set off, unaware that this pivotal trip would turn into a horrifying nightmare. After receiving the report, Tokyo police contacted Taiwanese police through Interpol, hoping they could assist in finding the missing Mariko. Upon receiving the request, Taiwanese police immediately began their investigation. They first checked immigration records. Mariko had arrived in Taiwan on April 2nd, but there was no record of her leaving the country. According to Taiwan railway records, Mariko had boarded a train from Tainan to Kaohsiung at 11 a.m. on April 7th and arrived in Kaohsiung around noon. With this information, the police decided to focus their search efforts in Kaohsiung. They launched a widespread campaign, posting missing person notices throughout the city. The posters described Mariko Iguchi in detail, a 23-year-old Japanese girl, 5 feet tall, with short hair, wearing black-rimmed glasses, and with a small mole at the left corner of her mouth. Mariko's mother in Tokyo couldn't wait any longer. She flew to Taiwan and distributed flyers to passers-by, desperately wanting to find her daughter. However, in a short time, she received no useful leads. She could only return to Japan to await the results of the police investigation. As the missing person was a foreigner, the case attracted close attention from local residents. People began to speculate about Mariko's fate. Some believed she might have fallen victim to human traffickers. Others thought that Mariko, with her pure beauty and characteristic youthful naivety, could have become a target for criminals. They imagined a heartbreaking scenario, the young girl being lured by sweet talk, then forced to work in red light districts or other depraved places. They speculated that her disappearance might also be related to criminal gangs. The mysterious disappearance of Mariko Iguchi quickly became the focus of media attention. Major news outlets continuously updated information, offering analyses and hypotheses about the fate of the young woman. The story of the Japanese student who suddenly vanished during her trip to Taiwan spread like wildfire, causing a stir in both countries. Pressure mounted on the police. With few clues, they were forced to expand their investigation, focusing on entertainment establishments in Kaohsiung, where Mariko was last believed to have been. They hoped to find traces of her in these places. However, after days and nights of investigation, the police still couldn't obtain any significant leads. Just then, a glimmer of hope appeared when a woman approached the police. She claimed to be a psychic and said she had used her special abilities to see Mariko's fate. According to this woman, Mariko might have been murdered and her body dumped in a lake or the sea. With this lead from the psychic, police focused their attention on Chengqing Lake, a famous artificial lake in Kaohsiung located between Tianjin and Yangjie districts. Based on this theory, police sent a team to search the lake. However, apart from pulling up some animal carcasses and trash, they found no traces related to Mariko. Just as the investigation seemed to hit a dead end, a man named Lee from Tainan approached the police and provided an important clue. He said that on April 4th, he had met Mariko near Tainan Station. She looked rushed, as if lost. Mr. Lee, seeing this, proactively approached to ask if she needed help. After chatting, he learned she was a tourist from Japan. To save money, Mariko had asked Mr. Lee if he knew of any cheap hostels nearby. Upon hearing this, the kind-hearted Mr. Lee offered to let her stay at his home, as he happened to have a spare bedroom. Mariko happily agreed. For the next 2 days, Mr. Lee not only provided free accommodation, but also became an enthusiastic tour guide for Mariko. On his motorcycle, he took her to explore many famous tourist spots in Tainan, sharing stories about local history and culture. From Mr. Lee's account, it seemed Mariko had thoroughly enjoyed her time in Tainan, always smiling and excited about every new experience. After staying at Mr. Lee's house for 2 nights, Mariko planned to leave Tainan to continue south to Kaohsiung. On the morning of April 7th, Mr. Lee drove her on his motorcycle to Tainan Station and watched her enter the station. Mr. Lee described Mariko as a lively, cheerful girl who left a good impression not only on him, but on his entire family. He asserted that throughout her stay, Mariko showed no signs of anything unusual and had a great time in Tainan. Before leaving, she even wrote down her home address in Japan, hoping they could keep in touch in the future. Mr. Lee then handed over to the police the address Mariko had written for him. After comparing the handwriting, they confirmed it was written by Mariko. With a serious and objective work attitude, the police expanded their investigation, interviewing not only Mr. Lee's family, but also the surrounding neighbors. The results were very consistent. Everyone confirmed Mr. Lee's statement was accurate. They affirmed seeing Mariko stay at Mr. Lee's house for 2 days before leaving. Many people emphasized that Mr. Lee was known for his kindness in the area, always ready to help others in need. The witnesses all agreed that Mr. Lee was trustworthy and would absolutely not do anything unethical. To prove his innocence, Mr. Lee told the police that before taking Mariko to the station on April 7th, he had bought her 2 bottles of water at a convenience store outside the station. He suggested that the store owner might remember them. Therefore, the police went to the convenience store Mr. Lee had mentioned. According to the store owner's memory, Mr. Lee had indeed bought water there that day. At that time, there was a beautiful young girl behind him, so the store owner remembered clearly. At this point, suspicions about Mr. Lee were dismissed. Now the police theorized that, after being treated well by Mr. Lee's family in Tainan, Mariko might have become too trusting of strangers' kindness. When she arrived in Kaohsiung, she might have been ready to accept help from unfamiliar people, unaware of the potential risks. In a situation lacking vigilance, Mariko could have become a target for those with ill intentions. As time passed, the investigation made no progress. Just when everyone thought this case would become a cold case, the police received an anonymous letter. The letter mentioned a taxi driver with strange behavior in Kaohsiung City. His car was covered with talismans, and he had placed several Buddha statues on the dashboard. During the time Mariko went missing, he had told passengers, "I know exactly where that girl is because I saw her last." The police immediately began investigating after receiving the anonymous letter. They quickly identified this taxi driver in Kaohsiung. To avoid alerting the suspect, the police deployed a sophisticated investigation strategy. A group of undercover investigators was sent to the taxi stand at Kaohsiung International Airport to gather information. This taxi driver's name was Liu Shuiqiang. His colleagues all described him as a very eccentric person. After Mariko's disappearance, he had repeatedly mentioned her whereabouts to people. Then, as if possessed, he had covered his car with talismans and even brought several Buddha statues from a temple to place in his car. Every day, he would say there was a female ghost following him to claim his life. Initially, when people heard Liu say these things, they thought he was just talking nonsense. But after seeing his strange behavior, they began to feel he might be telling the truth. People who haven't done bad things aren't afraid of ghosts knocking on their door. Therefore, everyone felt Liu was suspicious. According to the investigation, Liu Shuiqiang was 30 years old, the third child in his family, with 2 older sisters and a younger brother. He and his family used to live on Feijichang Road in Kaohsiung, but then his 2 sisters got married one after another. His parents divorced due to relationship issues, so his mother took the youngest brother away. His father remarried, leaving only him living alone in the old house. Although suspicions about Liu had arisen, the police remained cautious in their approach, not rushing to conclusions without sufficient evidence. Therefore, they decided to approach his mother to gather more information. She revealed that 6 months ago, her son had asked her for money to buy a new house, but she didn't have that much. Liu became very angry, threw a newspaper at her face and said, "Do you see the missing woman in the newspaper? I killed her. I've already killed one person, so I don't mind killing another." When hearing such words, his mother didn't take it too seriously. She was used to these kinds of threats from her son. Because her son suffered from schizophrenia, acted impulsively, and had violent tendencies, she had left him to live alone in the old house. But a few days later, her son came to her again, saying that a headless female ghost in white was coming to claim his life. During that time, news about Mariko's disappearance was everywhere. She thought her son might have seen related news, triggering his mental illness, causing him to imagine Mariko's ghost haunting him. The police went to Liu's neighbors to gather more information. Some said he was a very strange person, often shouting alone in the house, as if agitated by something. He had a peculiar hobby of torturing cats and dogs. Those living nearby often saw him carrying a crossbow, which is a weapon that requires a permit to purchase, and no one knew where he got it from. Whenever he saw stray cats or dogs, he would use the crossbow to shoot them dead. Liu's unusual behaviors increased the police's suspicions, prompting them to conduct a direct interrogation. When facing the police, Liu showed clear signs of psychological instability. He appeared extremely nervous, unable to focus on answering questions coherently, and even exhibited aggressive behavior, attempting to attack the police. This behavior raised the question of whether he truly suffered from schizophrenia or was pretending to avoid suspicion. Recognizing the complexity and importance of the case, 2 months after Mariko's disappearance, the police decided to establish a special investigation team codenamed 0407 to continue searching for Mariko's whereabouts. They posted reward notices offering 50,000 new Taiwan dollars, approximately 1,600 USD, to anyone providing useful information. At the same time, Mariko's mother added her own reward of 500,000 Japanese yen, approximately 4,500 US dollars. Not long after, the police received a tip claiming that Mariko had been murdered and her body buried in a cemetery in Xinxi District, Tainan City. The police quickly mobilized a large force to conduct a focused search in that area, but found nothing. During the investigation, whenever Mariko's mother had free time, she would fly to Taiwan to search for her daughter. She even established the Mariko Iguchi Search Support Association, believing that her daughter must have just gotten lost somewhere and was still alive. 8 months after the incident, the police increased the reward to 1 million new Taiwan dollars, approximately 32,000 USD, declaring they would definitely find Mariko, whether alive or dead. In January 1991, the police received another report. This time, someone said they had discovered a body in a sugarcane field in Huli District, Taichung City. The police went to the scene and found that the body's shape was very similar to Mariko's, but it was too decomposed to be identified. They compared the victim's teeth with Mariko's dental records, and the results showed they didn't match. It wasn't Mariko. 2 months later, another taxi driver provided the police with an important clue. He said he was a colleague of Liu and believed Liu was the killer. Previously, Liu had only put talismans and Buddha statues in his car, but now he was directly playing the Great Compassion mantra in his car. Every day, Liu didn't dare to go home and slept in his taxi. Even when going to the bathroom, he would quickly return to the car as if something was always following him. This taxi driver told the police that perhaps if they searched Liu's house, they could find out the truth. The clue provided by this taxi driver was very important, but due to lack of evidence, the police couldn't request a search warrant from the court. Just as the case seemed to hit another dead end, one of Liu Shuiqiang's neighbors voluntarily approached the police and said, recently, at night, they often heard a woman's crying coming from Liu's house, sounding very miserable and chilling. This neighbor had gone to ask Liu about it, but unexpectedly, as soon as Liu heard this, he turned pale and was speechless. The neighbor felt something strange and, after much consideration, decided to tell the police about this. In March 1991, the police arrested Liu on suspicion of murder and searched his house. In an open area in the backyard, they found traces of burning. Next, the police checked the water meter of his house and discovered that in April 1990, the water usage had suddenly surged, increasing by 1,320 gallons compared to normal usage before. Liu Shuiqiang lived alone, so such a dramatic increase in water usage was certainly unusual. Then, the police planned to excavate the area in the backyard. Before digging, an old police officer clasped his hands in prayer, mumbling, hoping that Mariko's spirit in heaven could guide them to find her body. Unexpectedly, just as he finished praying, he felt someone pat him hard on the shoulder. He was startled, thinking someone was playing a prank, but when he turned around, there was no one there. This made him even more convinced that Mariko's body must be buried under this piece of land. However, after a period of digging, they still found nothing. After being arrested, Liu Shuiqiang's attitude was very arrogant. Whenever he was asked questions related to this case, he would curse terribly, saying the police were blind and wrongly accusing a good person. The police had grasped Liu Shuiqiang's weakness of being very afraid of ghosts, so they continuously pressured him. Sure enough, not long after, he became scared and confessed to all his crimes. The circumstances of the crime were reconstructed as follows. On April 7, 1990, Liu Shuiqiang, who had nothing to do at the time, was wandering around near Kaohsiung Station. Around noon, he saw Mariko alone carrying a backpack. Finding her attractive, he approached to chat. When he learned she was Japanese, his interest grew even more. Through their conversation, Liu quickly realized that Mariko was completely unfamiliar with Kaohsiung. Seizing this opportunity, he offered to take her to Chongqing Lake, a famous scenic spot. This offer was made naturally, as if stemming from Liu's hospitality and free time. Mariko, with somewhat naive trust, happily accepted, perhaps thinking she had again met a kind local like her previous experiences. On the way to Chongqing Lake, the two seemed to have interesting and comfortable conversations. This cheerful and friendly atmosphere made Mariko feel at ease, unaware that she was approaching danger. When Liu learned that Mariko was still a college student, his desire grew stronger. As night fell, Mariko asked him if he knew of any cheap hotels, explaining that as a student, she didn't have much money. To lure her to his home, Liu lied, saying that hotels in Kaohsiung were different from other places and required reservations many days in advance. He conveniently mentioned that he had a spare room at home where she could stay for free. Mariko, unsuspecting, immediately accepted this kindness and followed him home. That evening, Liu deliberately prepared a table full of food and bought a bottle of good wine to entertain Mariko. After several drinks, he began to reveal his true nature, attempting to get intimate with her, but was firmly rejected. Mariko angrily pushed him away and stood up, intending to leave immediately. Seeing her about to leave, Liu bowed his head and apologized, saying he had drunk too much. After his explanation, Mariko reluctantly stayed but immediately went to the bedroom and locked the door. That night, Liu became increasingly angry, believing Mariko was just pretending to be pure. Suddenly, an evil thought arose in his mind. In the early hours of the morning, he found the spare key to Mariko's bedroom, took his crossbow, and silently opened her door. Mariko was sound asleep. Liu approached the bed, aimed at her temple, and pulled the trigger. The young Mariko lost her life in her sleep. Next, Liu took a cleaver and began the lengthy process of dismembering the body. He then wrapped the parts in blankets and disposed of them, along with the murder weapon, in various locations. After this, he discovered that the floor and bed in Mariko's room were covered in blood. To destroy the evidence, he took everything to the backyard and burned it. After hearing Liu Shuiqiang's confession about the crime process, all the police present were shocked. The bespectacled man who appeared gentle before them was capable of such brutal acts. Although Liu Shuiqiang had confessed to the entire crime process, the victim's body and the murder weapon had not been found, so he still couldn't be charged. Whether Liu understood this point or not, he still refused to reveal the specific locations. In the following days, he sometimes said he dumped the body in Tainan, sometimes in Kaohsiung, constantly lying. The police forced him to go to each location to check, but each time they came up empty-handed. Liu Shuiqiang was very cunning, leading the police in circles, exhausting everyone. On March 8th, Liu Shuiqiang still refused to disclose the specific location. The police were also very patient, determined to confront him to the end. That afternoon, after a day of going back and forth between many places, Liu was both hungry and thirsty. He begged the police to let him eat a meal before continuing the search. But the police refused, telling him that if he wanted to eat, he had to reveal the specific location. Seeing the police's firm attitude, Liu thought carefully and finally told the truth. He said he had divided Mariko into two parts. The body was dumped at a location on Chongming 13th Road in Tainan City, while the head was thrown into a garbage pile on Nanmen Road. He had gone to the trouble of traveling from Kaohsiung to Tainan because he knew Mariko had met the kind Mr. Li there. He wanted to cast suspicion on Mr. Li, so he went to Tainan City to dump the body at night. The police went to the location Liu provided, but by this time, a year had passed since the incident. The empty lot on Chongming 13th Road had changed, becoming a parking lot. Liu said that at the time, he had buried the body under a large tree, but over time, the large tree was no longer there. However, the tree roots had not been dug up. After some digging, the police discovered over 100 bone fragments near the tree stump. Forensic examination determined that these bones belonged to a woman between 23 and 25 years old, about 5 feet tall. These characteristics matched the victim, Mariko. Moreover, forensic experts found knife marks on a shoulder blade, believed to be caused by a cleaver. This also matched Liu Shuiqiang's confession. Investigation revealed that the head, after being discarded, had been transferred to the Ronde landfill in Tainan City. Searching for a skull in the foul-smelling garbage pile was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, the accumulated garbage over the years had produced methane gas, making the excavation potentially dangerous. This was also a significant challenge for the search team. Therefore, they abandoned the search for the head. When asked where he had disposed of the crossbow used in the crime, Liu said he had thrown it into the Love River in Kaohsiung. According to him, even if the police knew the location, it would be useless as the chance of finding it was very small. However, surprisingly, the search team took less than a minute in the water to retrieve the crossbow. The speed was so incredible that it seemed unbelievable. Mariko's mother came to Taiwan once again from Japan. When she learned the terrible news, she broke down in tears. Comforted by others, she said this couldn't be her daughter and refused to take a DNA test. She only hoped the police could find the head. Otherwise, she couldn't believe her daughter had left this world like this. Ms. Hisako's request put the police in a difficult position. Searching for the skull would require a lot of manpower and resources, and there was no guarantee of finding it. The police explained the actual situation to Mariko's mother and even took her to the garbage dump. After understanding the reality of the situation, Ms. Hisako expressed her understanding and no longer insisted on finding the skull. However, she hoped the police could help find her daughter's personal belongings from when she was alive. When going to Taiwan, Mariko had brought a white backpack containing an umbrella, flashlight, and other items. She said if the police could find these things, she would agree to provide her DNA sample. The police agreed to Ms. Hisako's request, but knew that the search would be very difficult. They interrogated Liu again. He said that Mariko's personal belongings had long been thrown into a trash can near his house as garbage, and the trash cans were collected daily by sanitation workers, so the police would never be able to find them. Although Liu Shuiqiang tried to conceal his actions, an unexpected situation broke his plan. During the expanded investigation, the police interviewed sanitation workers working near Liu Shuiqiang's house. Through this, they collected crucial information from a worker named B. Mr. B recounted a strange incident that occurred in April 1990, coinciding with Mariko's disappearance. During his routine work, he had discovered a white backpack discarded in a trash can on Feiji Road. What caught his attention was that the backpack looked very new, unlike typical discarded items. Out of curiosity, Mr. B opened the backpack and was surprised to find an umbrella and a flashlight inside, all in brand new condition. Realizing these were still good items, he decided to take them home, thinking it would be wasteful to throw them away. However, from the day he picked them up until the time the police interviewed him, Mr. B had not used any of these items, and they were still kept intact in his house. Later, Mr. B went home to retrieve these items and handed them over to the police. When Mariko's mother saw her daughter's belongings, she understood that her daughter had truly left this world. She then kept her promise and agreed to provide a DNA sample. The results quickly confirmed that the bone fragments found by the police belonged to the victim, Mariko. 1 year after the incident, the Kaohsiung District Court opened a trial. The defendant, Liu Shuiqiang, was charged with murder and disposing of a corpse. After the trial, the court announced its verdict. Defendant Liu Shuiqiang was found guilty and sentenced to death. However, considering that he suffered from mental illness, which qualified him for a reduced sentence, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. During the appeal period, Liu Shuiqiang did not accept the verdict and filed multiple appeals. However, his appeals were rejected. After months of relentless investigation, the mysterious disappearance case of Mariko Iguchi was finally resolved, and the murderer received appropriate punishment under the law. However, the conclusion of the case could not bring complete consolation to Mariko's family, especially the mother's pain of losing her child, which would never fade away. Mariko's story has become a painful warning about the potential dangers of traveling alone, as well as a testament to the necessity of increasing vigilance to protect one's safety and that of those around us. And that is the story for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. On May 11, 2016, Li Yangjie, a Chinese student studying at Anhalt University of Applied Sciences in Dessau, Germany, prepared for her routine evening jog. After buying some groceries and storing them in her dorm room, she changed into her familiar workout clothes. Although it was 8:30 p.m., the sky was still bright as daylight due to Germany's northern latitude. After saying goodbye to her roommate, Yangjie put on her headphones and began her usual run. This was a physical activity she had maintained consistently for a long time. No matter how busy her studies were, she always made time for running. Her familiar route took her through the old town, past the museum, and through the city park. However, that evening, she hadn't run far when a woman stopped her near a nearby building. This young woman with doll-like features talked to Yangjie for about a minute. Despite appearing hesitant and uncomfortable, Yangjie ultimately agreed to follow this stranger into a nearby apartment. The next morning, Yangjie's classmate Jolie Hong sent her a WeChat message. The two were close friends and usually met for breakfast daily. But this time, Jo didn't receive a response from Yangjie. Instead, she got a call from Yangjie's roommate. The roommate first asked if Yangjie was with Jo. After receiving a negative answer, he anxiously explained that Yangjie hadn't returned to her room all night. Her bedroom door was ajar, clothes were strewn on the bed, and her phone and running gear were missing. Her phone was also consistently switched off. Yangjie was known to be a well-behaved and cautious girl. During her time studying in Germany, she had limited her social circle to fellow international students at her university. Although fluent in English, her German skills were limited, making it unlikely for her to stay out overnight voluntarily. A sense of unease quickly enveloped Yangjie's friends. They decided to report the matter to the school. The university administration immediately mobilized teachers and students to conduct a large-scale search operation. They scoured classrooms, laboratories, the library, as well as along Yangjie's usual running route and places she frequented. By 1 p.m. that day, when all the school's search efforts yielded no results, they were forced to seek police assistance. Immediately, the Dessau Police Department launched a large-scale search operation, deploying helicopters and search dogs. They conducted a comprehensive search of places where Yangjie might have appeared, focusing particularly on surrounding areas with high crime rates. At the same time, the local Chinese community quickly responded, spreading information and voluntarily joining the search team. However, despite relentless efforts for a day and a night, there was still no trace of Yangjie, causing increasing worry and confusion. On the morning of May 13th, the police tried calling Yangjie's phone and were surprised when the call connected. A man's voice came from the other end, but the call was quickly cut off. Due to the brevity of the call, the police couldn't trace its location. Around 11 a.m. that day, a construction worker on Houseman Street discovered a naked female body lying between the construction site's temporary toilet and some bushes. After police confirmation, the victim showed no signs of life. Through autopsy and DNA comparison, the person was identified as the missing Li Yangjie. She had multiple bone fractures, severe facial damage, and traces of another person's bodily fluids. It's hard to imagine the pain she endured before her death. Who were the perpetrators? Why did they kill Li Yangjie? Li Yangjie was born in 1990 in Jiaozhuo City, Henan Province. She came from a happy family. Her father was a police officer, and her mother was a teacher. Yangjie had been a good student from a young age with a gentle personality, and was the only daughter in the family. After graduating from high school, Li Yangjie was admitted to the architecture department of Henan University of Science and Technology. After completing her undergraduate degree in 2014, she was accepted into Anhalt University of Applied Sciences in Germany with outstanding achievements. Like many Chinese families, although Li Yangjie's family wasn't wealthy, her parents still managed to send their daughter abroad, hoping she would succeed. When Li Yangjie received her admission letter, joy and hope filled the entire household. The farewell at Beijing International Airport was emotional, with her mother unable to hold back tears as she watched her daughter leave, carrying the dreams and expectations of the whole family. After Yangjie left for her studies, her parents at home eagerly awaited news of their daughter's success. However, what no one could have anticipated was that just 2 months before graduation, she would tragically pass away, leaving behind inconsolable grief for her loved ones. As soon as they received the devastating news, Yangjie's parents hurriedly packed their bags, completed the necessary procedures, and boarded a flight to Germany. On May 20th, they arrived in Dessau. The couple didn't have the courage to face their daughter's body. That evening, the entire faculty and student body of the school organized a memorial service for Li Yangjie. Her mother knelt on the ground, crying silently, while her father remained silent, deep in thought. The next day, the couple visited the apartment where their daughter had lived. Looking at the items their child had used, they felt overwhelming sorrow. Yangjie's father was an experienced criminal investigator. At his request, the police took the couple to examine the crime scene. The Dessau police detectives informed them that the area had been cordoned off. They had searched all the garbage dumps in the surrounding area and found some of Yangjie's belongings in over 110,000 pounds of trash. Upon examination, the DNA on these items matched Lee Yangjie's DNA. However, the police found no related information in their database. Mr. Lee pondered the events from beginning to end, feeling that something wasn't right. He walked back and forth several times from his daughter's apartment to where she was last seen. Suddenly, he realized that the location where the body was found was very close to the apartment, a place his daughter often ran past. If it were a premeditated crime, the perpetrator wouldn't be foolish enough to dump the body so close. Therefore, this seemed more like a spontaneous crime. Could the perpetrator be a neighbor living in a nearby building? Mr. Lee presented his views to the police. The detectives were very surprised, saying they had never thought of this. They believed that the place where the body was dumped wasn't the initial crime scene, but likely just where the perpetrator randomly disposed of it after the crime. However, after hearing Mr. Lee's analysis, the police found it very logical. So they sent people to investigate residents in the surrounding area. But after more than 10 days, they still hadn't made any breakthroughs. When the case reached a deadlock and the police were preparing to expand their search scope, a young couple came to the Dessau police station to report. They said they knew some details about the case and could help solve it. What they said next shocked everyone. The couple consisted of Sebastian F., born in 1996, and Zania L., born in 1997. They had 3 children, 2 of whom were with the current boyfriend. Although both were over 20 years old, they had never attended university and hadn't even completed Germany's 12 years of compulsory basic education. With no income, they lived in an apartment rented by their parents. Notably, this apartment was right next to where Yangjie's body was found. Sebastian revealed to the police that on the evening of May 10th, the day before Yangjie went missing, he was at home watching cartoons. Meanwhile, his girlfriend Zania was walking outside when she happened to meet Yangjie jogging. Finding her attractive, she asked if Yangjie would like to participate in a threesome game. Surprisingly, according to their statement, Yangjie agreed immediately and went with Zania to Sebastian's apartment. They claimed to have had a good time together, and when leaving, Yangjie even said she'd like to meet again. Sebastian said that after hearing the girl had died, they worried the police would find their DNA on the body and cause unnecessary trouble, so they came specifically to explain the situation. The Dessau Police Department opened an investigation based on this lead. Upon examination, the bodily fluids found in Yangjie's body indeed belonged to Sebastian. Given the significant social impact of this case, the police immediately took the couple into custody as a precautionary measure. Up to this point, the Dessau police's handling of the case seemed normal, but the events that followed were somewhat strange. On the afternoon of May 24th, prosecutor Falk Pittman held a press conference. He announced that 2 suspects had been arrested, but whether they were the perpetrators still needed further investigation. However, the information the police had was that the victim had voluntarily participated in a threesome with the 2 suspects before her death. Such an irresponsible press conference not only damaged Yangjie's reputation, but also misled public opinion. The police not only failed to verify the suspect's statements, but also deliberately concealed clear blood traces in the suspect's apartment. These bloodstains were scattered on the floor, sofa, walls, heater, and ceiling. Yangjie's parents were devastated. They couldn't believe that even after death, their daughter was subject to such baseless speculation. Teachers and students at the school responded that Yangjie was a well-behaved girl, very naive in matters of love. Her daily life revolved only around school and the dormitory, and she had never stayed out overnight. Moreover, Yangjie wasn't fluent in German. How could such a girl do such things with 2 strangers who didn't speak her language? After this absurd press conference, a friend of Lee Yangjie came to the Dessau Police Department. He said that on the evening of May 10th, he had met Lee Yangjie at the central station, and they had exchanged greetings. Another friend could corroborate this, and the time this friend mentioned coincided with the period when the 2 suspects falsely accused Yangjie. Clearly, the couple was lying. So why did the police release such an unsubstantiated statement? Were they trying to cover up something? In fact, the police's initial investigation direction was wrong from the start. If Mr. Lee hadn't insisted on searching the surrounding area, causing the suspects to feel pressured and voluntarily confess, who knows when this case would have been solved. The day after the press conference, some Chinese and German media outlets reported unverified information. Yangjie was suspected by many people who didn't know the truth. In a short time, the incident caused a public uproar. The case quickly spread, and soon most Chinese international students in Germany stood up in protest. They believed that the incomplete information released by the prosecutor had misled public opinion and violated the honor of the deceased. The police investigation was ineffective, slow in collecting and transferring key evidence, showing signs of covering up for the criminals. As public opinion spread wider, the case continued to be magnified. Finally, the media did something good. They dug up more secrets. It turned out that Sebastian's mother was a high-ranking official in the Dessau Police Department, and his stepfather was the chief of the Dessau Police Department. Meanwhile, Yangjie's case had always been handled by the Dessau Police Department. This information inevitably led to speculation. However, what angered people more was that the police had deliberately concealed a fact. This man named Sebastian had been involved in over 40 cases, including arson, theft, and harassment of women. But these crimes seemed to have no impact on his life. Until he turned himself in, Sebastian had been living freely outside the law. The reason, I think, is self-evident. By May 2016, in addition to students studying in Germany, local Chinese organizations and many German citizens had joined the group demanding justice for Yangjie, calling for the Dessau police to severely punish the criminals and restore justice for the deceased. Under increasing pressure, the authorities were forced to announce the suspension of Sebastian's mother and stepfather and handed the case over to the Halle Police Department. The investigation started anew. Yangjie's father recounted that on May 21st, the suspect's stepfather, who was also the chief of the Dessau Police Department, had taken him to examine the crime scene. That day, in front of the apartment, Mr. Lee had seen Sebastian, but at that time he didn't know that the person who took him to see the scene and the man in the apartment were family. In addition, witnesses claimed to have seen Sebastian's parents leaving the apartment with him, carrying large and small garbage bags. They seemed to be moving out. And this moment was on the night Mr. Lee requested the police to investigate the surrounding residents. Later, upon inspection, Sebastian's apartment had undergone several thorough cleanings, but over 100 bloodstains were still found in an empty room, even reaching the 10-foot-high ceiling. According to neighbors, on the night of the crime, they had heard a woman's screams coming from Sebastian's apartment for a long time. But they all knew the couple had some special preferences, so they didn't pay much attention. Subsequently, the Halle police found a surveillance video provided by the owner of an antique shop on the first floor of Sebastian's apartment building. At 9:20 p.m. on May 11th, when Yangjie was jogging by, she was stopped by Zania. The two talked for about a minute, with Zania appearing anxious, as if begging for help. Yangjie hesitated for a moment before entering the apartment with her. At 2:30 a.m., Sebastian left the apartment, wandering around outside as if searching for something, but quickly returned to the apartment. Yangjie never came out again. At this point, the case seemed quite clear and appeared to be nearing resolution. But things were not that simple. First, Sebastian's parents claimed that the move had been planned in advance because there was mold in the house, harmful to health. But quickly, the landlord exposed their lie. Upon inspection, the house was quite clean and free of mold. The landlord stated that after the incident, Sebastian had paid 6 months' rent in advance and requested that no one else be allowed to rent. The police learned through telecom company records that on May 12th, the day after Yangjie went missing, Sebastian had called his mother more than 10 times, far exceeding the normal number of calls. Even just before going to the police station to turn himself in, he had a 40-minute phone conversation with his mother. On November 25, 2016, the trial for Yangjie's case officially began. Sebastian's parents hired experienced lawyers and instructed the two defendants to cover their faces with documents, use their right to remain silent reasonably, not say a word, and let the lawyers answer on their behalf. The defense strongly pointed out first that the most important evidence in this case, the surveillance video provided by the antique shop owner, was problematic. Because the surveillance camera in the store didn't capture footage of Yangjie being harmed, and the outdoor surveillance footage was of a public area related to personal privacy and couldn't be made public. The court also couldn't accept it as evidence. In other words, this video could only prove that Yangjie had entered the apartment, but no one knew if she had come out. Because the public area video couldn't be made public, whether it was recorded or not was no longer important. Faced with such cunning defense, the prosecution presented more evidence. A few days before Yangjie went missing, Sebastian had searched on his computer for keywords like Asian women, bondage, beating, etc. And in the early morning of the day Li Yangjie was murdered, he had searched for content related to how to hide a body. Additionally, in the phones of the two suspects, the police found a large number of pornographic videos. Combining the computer search history, phone videos, DNA test results, and the antique shop's surveillance camera, each piece of evidence from the prosecution had undeniable reasons. Faced with this evidence, perhaps realizing her unfavorable situation, the female suspect, Zania, finally wavered. In the 10th court session, she finally revealed the truth about the case. Zania said that she had been abused by her stepfather since childhood, so she grew up with very low self-esteem. After meeting Sebastian, she extremely indulged him and satisfied all his strange requests. If he was slightly displeased, she would be beaten. On the night of the incident, Sebastian told her to find someone to play a game with them, so she had to deceive Yangjie, saying there was a big box in the house that needed help moving, hoping she could assist. After the two entered the apartment, Sebastian quickly rushed out to control Yangjie, followed by a night of torture. During that time, whenever Yangjie showed any resistance, she would be violently beaten by him. After everything was over, Zania went upstairs to shower, but when she came down, she saw the floor covered in blood. She asked her boyfriend what had happened, and Sebastian said Yangjie was dead. Zania cried and asked why they didn't let her go, and he said it was because she didn't obey. Finally, they put Yangjie's body in a trash can and threw it out of the second-floor window late at night when no one was around. When Sebastian went outside and walked around the apartment, it was to check if Yangjie's body had been well hidden. Zania's lawyer emphasized that due to long-term oppression by her boyfriend, along with her unfortunate past and the fact that Zania was only 19 years old when the incident occurred, her mind was not yet mature, so they hoped the judge could reduce her sentence. However, is this the truth? Was Zania really just forced to participate in the crime? Regarding Zania's testimony, the prosecutor argued that this was because she realized she was facing a murder charge, so to mitigate her punishment, she blamed everything on her boyfriend and her unfortunate childhood. Without Zania, Yangjie wouldn't have been deceived. Moreover, after the incident, Zania cooperated with her boyfriend to report to the police station, trying to conceal the truth. Most importantly, the forensic report showed that Yangjie was still clutching a handful of Zania's hair, proving that the two had struggled, contradicting Zania's claim that she was also a victim. However, the most puzzling thing was that even at this point, Sebastian's lawyer could boldly tell the judge that his client also had psychological and mental issues, even more severe than Zania's, hoping for a reduced sentence as well. On August 4th, 2017, after 35 court sessions, the Dessau court declared Sebastian guilty of murder and assault, along with several other charges, sentencing him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Zania, due to her confession, was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison. The families of the two criminals were ordered to pay 60,000 euros, approximately $71,000, in emotional damages to Li Yangjie's parents. Due to lack of concrete evidence of Sebastian's parents covering up for their son, the court declared them not guilty. In Germany, a country that has abolished the death penalty, life imprisonment without parole is the highest punishment. After the sentencing, Sebastian declared his dissatisfaction and appealed. Zania also appealed, claiming that she had never been loved since childhood and was later controlled by her boyfriend, still feeling the sentence was too heavy. However, the appeals of both were rejected, and the court upheld the original verdict. Although both criminals have been punished by law, Lee Yangjie will never be able to return home. We hope she can rest in peace in heaven. At the same time, we hope that everyone will always remain vigilant to protect their own safety and that of those around them. And that's it for today's 2 cases. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.